The night sky was clear above the Arecibo Auxiliary Station in Puerto Rico. Dr. Olivia Martinez rubbed her tired eyes as she looked at her computer screen. The clock on the wall showed 2:17 a.m. Most of her coworkers had gone home hours ago, but Olivia always stayed late. The quiet of the night shift helped her think. A soft beep from her equipment broke the silence. Olivia turned to check what caused it. The radio telescope had picked up something unusual. She adjusted her glasses and leaned closer to the monitor. "That's strange," she whispered to herself. The signal was unlike anything she had seen before. It wasn't random space noise or a satellite communication. It had a pattern that repeated every 12 seconds. Olivia's heart beat faster as she began to analyze the data. 3 hours later, as the first light of dawn appeared, Olivia was still working. She had run every test she knew. The signal was coming from the Kepler 438 star system, about 470 light-years from Earth. And it wasn't natural. Olivia reached for her phone with shaking hands and called her boss, Dr. Alan Cooper. "Alan, you need to come to the station right now," she said when he answered. "Olivia? It's 5:30 in the morning. What's going on?" "I found something. A signal from Kepler 438. It's a message, Alan, from someone out there." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Alan said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't tell anyone else yet." By noon, the small observation lab was filled with people. Scientists from other departments had been called in. Government officials in dark suits stood in corners, talking in low voices. Olivia explained her findings over and over. "The signal contains data packets," she said, pointing to her screen. "When decoded, they show images and coordinates. Look." On the large display, grainy pictures appeared. They showed a blue-green planet similar to Earth, with large oceans and continents. But dark spots marked the surface, like burn marks on skin. Around the planet, massive ships hung in space. "The message is a distress call," Olivia continued. "From what we can tell, the planet is under attack. These ships are bombing the surface. How can you be sure?" asked one of the government men. His badge identified him as Agent Wilson from National Security. "Because they included this," Olivia replied. She tapped a key, and a new image appeared. It showed beings that looked somewhat like tall, slender humans with feather-like growths on their heads and arms. Behind them, buildings burned. The image was blurry, but their fear was clear even across the vast distance of space. "There's text too," Alan added. "It took us hours to figure out the language structure, but the message is simple. They're asking for help." Agent Wilson frowned. "Help from who? How would they even know about Earth?" Olivia pulled up another section of the message. "They say they know of humans from ancient stellar records." The exact words translated are, "We know of your kind from ancient stellar records. If any spark of the legendary human warrior spirit still exists, we beg for your aid." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Humans described as legendary warriors in records from a civilization hundreds of light-years away. "There's more," Olivia said quietly. "The attackers. The message identifies them as a species called the Vorax, and it says they've been expanding through multiple star systems for centuries. This has to go to the Security Council immediately," Agent Wilson said, already on his phone. Within hours, the United Nations Security Council gathered for an emergency session. The meeting was closed to the public, but inside, leaders from around the world watched in stunned silence as they viewed the evidence from Kepler-438. Admiral Gregory Phillips, head of the United Space Command, stood to address the council. He was a tall man with gray hair and a stern face that had seen many battles. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what I'm about to tell you has been classified at the highest level for over 50 years. Humanity has encountered signs of the Vorax. Before, gasps and murmurs filled the room. In 2073, one of our deep space probes recorded images of an unknown vessel near Jupiter's orbit. It disappeared before we could investigate further. Then in 2081, a research station on Mars picked up unusual readings. We found traces of a technology we couldn't explain. The Admiral paused, his face grim. After the colony wars ended in 2089, world leaders made a decision. We would present an image of a peaceful, technologically moderate species to the rest of the galaxy. But in secret, we would prepare. He pressed a button, and holographic images appeared above the table. They showed massive ships and weapon systems, far beyond what the public believed existed. Project Hibernation, he explained. The most advanced military fleet ever created by human hands. Hidden in secret bases on Earth and throughout the solar system. Maintained but inactive, waiting for the day we might need them. President Eliza Mason, a woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair, leaned forward. Are you telling us, Admiral, that we have the capability to respond to this call? To travel to Kepler 438? Yes, Madam President. The technology exists. The ships are ready. But awakening our war machines means revealing what we've kept hidden for decades. It means showing the galaxy what humans are truly capable of. Dr. Olivia Martinez, invited to the meeting as the discoverer of the signal, listened with wide eyes. She had spent her life looking at the stars, hoping to find signs of other life. Now she had found it, but not in the way she had imagined. The Keplerians are dying, she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the discussion. Their message says the Vorax have already destroyed 3 major cities. Their orbital defenses are failing. They don't have much time left. President Mason looked around the table at the representatives of Earth's nations. Then we have a choice to make. Do we stay hidden and safe, hoping the Vorax never find us? Or do we answer this call and reveal ourselves to the galaxy? One by one, the world leaders gave their votes. Some were afraid, others determined. But as the final tally was counted, the decision became clear. Admiral Phillips, President Mason said, her voice firm. You have authorization to activate Project Hibernation. Awaken our sleeping giants. Humanity is going to war. As the meeting ended, Olivia found herself standing next to the Admiral near a window overlooking New York City. Below, people went about their day, unaware that their world was about to change forever. I never imagined my discovery would lead to this, she said quietly. The Admiral nodded. Few people know how close we came to destroying ourselves in the colony wars. We locked away our capacity for violence, hoping we'd never need it again. He turned to look at her. But sometimes, Dr. Martinez, the universe needs warriors as well as scholars. And now, the galaxy is about to remember why even distant worlds speak of human warriors with awe. Outside the window, the afternoon sun gleamed on the peaceful city. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, beneath oceans, and hidden in mountain ranges, humanity's sleeping war giants were beginning to stir. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Commander Susan Rivera stood in a control room that few humans knew existed. The walls were lined with screens, showing the status of systems that had been dormant for decades. Lights that had been dim for years now glowed bright blue and green. Status report, she said to the team of technicians working at various stations. All power systems online, Commander, replied a young man named Paul Garcia. The base is fully operational. Susan nodded and walked to the main viewing window. Beyond the thick glass was an enormous underwater hangar. It stretched for miles. In every direction, hidden beneath 2,000 feet of ocean. Inside floated massive ships unlike any the public had ever seen. "Begin awakening sequence for the Use Valiant," she ordered. Alarms sounded throughout the base. Red warning lights flashed as massive pumps began to drain water from around the largest ship. The Use Valiant was over a mile long, with sleek lines that hinted at incredible speed despite its size. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflected it. "Commander, we have an incoming transmission from command," Paul said. Susan turned to the main screen. Admiral Phillips appeared, looking tired but determined. "Commander Rivera, what's your status?" "Awakening procedures underway for the Valiant, sir. We should have her ready to surface in 6 hours." "Good. We're activating all hibernation sites worldwide. I'm sending you a list of crew members being brought in. Some of them haven't served in years." Susan looked at the list as it appeared. On her screen, her eyes widened when she saw the first name. Colonel Frank Delgado, but he retired 15 years ago. The Admiral nodded. "We need our best, Susan. Delgado knows the Valiant better than anyone. He'll serve as your captain for this mission." "Understood, sir." After the call ended, Susan stared at the list of names. Many were veterans of the colony wars, people who had fought when Earth's first space colonies had tried to break away. Those wars had nearly destroyed humanity. When peace finally came, most weapons had been dismantled, or so the public believed. In truth, the most advanced ships and weapons had been hidden away in Project Hibernation, maintained in secret by a small group of dedicated personnel. Susan had spent her entire career here, watching over sleeping giants that were never supposed to wake. 6 hours later, she stood on a platform as a transport craft landed. The doors opened, and a group of men and women in simple civilian clothes stepped out. At their head was Colonel Frank Delgado. Despite being in his 70s, he stood straight and tall. His dark hair had gone completely white, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Commander Rivera," he said, offering his hand. "It's been a long time. Colonel, welcome back to active duty." He looked past her at the Valiant, now fully revealed as the water had been drained away. "She looks just as I remember her." "Has she been maintained?" "Perfectly, sir. Every system tested monthly." "She's ready to fly." Frank nodded slowly. "And her weapons?" "All operational, though I hope we won't need them." Frank turned to look at her. "We're responding to a distress call from an alien civilization under attack. We'll need them." The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Crew members arrived hourly. Many were veterans like Frank, called back to service from retirement. Others were younger, specially trained in secret for a day they thought might never come. Meanwhile, on the surface, the world was changing. President Mason had addressed the United Nations, revealing the existence of Project Hibernation. Across the globe, hidden facilities were opening. Giant ships rose from the ocean depths. Others emerged from underground bunkers or descended from concealed orbital stations in the Mojave Desert. Technician Adam Weiss worked with his team to unseal the vast underground complex that housed thousands of combat mechs. These were not the simple construction units or exploration robots known to the public. These were war machines built for battle in space and on alien worlds. "Power up the first 100 units," Adam ordered. As the mechs came online, their eyes glowed blue in the dim light of the bunker. Back at the Pacific base, Commander Rivera received word that the UES Defiance, Intrepid, and Guardian had also been awakened. Together with the Valiant, they would form the first response fleet to the Keplerian distress call. On the day of launch, Susan stood on the bridge of the Valiant beside Colonel Delgado. The ship had been moved to a massive lock chamber. When the doors opened, they would rise to the surface for the first time in 60 years. "All stations report ready, Colonel," she said. Frank nodded and took his place in the captain's chair. "Begin surface procedure." Water drained from the lock as The great ship settled onto support cradles. Then, with a deep rumble, the ceiling began to open. Sunlight streamed in, touching the dark hull of the Valiant. "Prepare for ascent," Frank ordered. The ship rose slowly at first, then faster as it cleared the base. Seawater streamed from its hull as it broke the surface of the Pacific Ocean. In the bright light of day, the Valiant was fully revealed. Its hull was not the white or gray of normal naval vessels, but a deep black that seemed to swallow light. Around the world, the same scene played out as humanity's hidden fleet emerged. News cameras captured the moments, broadcasting to a stunned global population. People stood in streets, watching screens in disbelief, as ships they never knew existed rose from the oceans or descended from the sky. On the bridge of the Valiant, Lieutenant Natalie Owens worked at the tactical station. At 28, she was one of the youngest officers aboard. She had trained all her life for this moment, though she had never seen actual combat. "Tactical systems online, Colonel," she reported. "Weapons check complete." Frank nodded. "Good work, Lieutenant." He turned to Susan. "Commander, are the jump gates ready?" "Yes, sir. The orbital facilities report all systems operational. They can open a gate to the Kepler system whenever we're ready." Jump gates. Another technology hidden from the public. The ability to create temporary wormholes through space, allowing ships to travel vast distances in days rather than centuries. Frank looked around at his crew. Many were young, like Natalie. Others were veterans he had served with years ago. All looked to him now for leadership. "Send word to the fleet," he said. "We launch in 1 hour. Today, we answer the call that came to us across the stars. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of when pushed to fight." As the crew prepared for departure, Dr. Olivia Martinez arrived on the bridge. As the discoverer of the signal, she had been assigned as the science officer for the mission. "The latest signals from Kepler 438 show the situation is getting worse," she reported. "The Vorax have destroyed most of the major cities. The Keplerians are running out of time." Frank's expression grew grim. "Then we won't waste any more of it. Commander Rivera, signal the fleet. We launch now." Across the Pacific Ocean, 4 massive ships rose into the sky. Their engines glowed with power that defied known physics. Higher and higher they climbed, until the blue of Earth's atmosphere gave way to the blackness of space. Ahead of them, a point of light began to grow. The jump gate was opening, creating a passage across hundreds of light years. The ships accelerated. Toward it, one after another. The U's Valiant was the last to enter. As it approached the shimmering gateway, Frank Delgado gave one final order. "All hands, prepare for jump. We're going to war." With that, the massive ship slipped into the gate and vanished from Earth's sky. Humanity's sleeping giants were awake, and the galaxy would never be the same. The journey through the jump gate was unlike anything most of the crew had experienced. For a moment that seemed both instant and eternal, the U.S. Valiant existed in a place between spaces. Light bent in impossible ways. Time stretched and compressed. Then, with a flash that briefly blinded the sensors, the ship emerged on the other side. "Jump complete," announced the navigation officer. "All systems normal." Colonel Frank Delgado leaned forward in his command chair. "Status of the fleet?" "UES Defiance, Intrepid, and Guardian all present and accounted for," replied Commander Susan Rivera. "We've arrived at the edge of the Kepler 438 system." The main screen showed a view of space that no human had ever seen directly before. A reddish star burned in the distance. Around it orbited several planets, including one blue-green world that looked eerily like Earth. "That's Kepler 438b, said Dr. Olivia Martinez, checking her science station. "The homeworld of the Keplerians." Even from this distance, they could see that something was wrong. Dark patches scarred the planet's surface. In orbit, huge shapes moved slowly around the world. Magnify, ordered Frank. The image zoomed in. The shapes resolved into massive ships, each one many times larger than the Valiant. They hung over the planet like predators, occasionally firing beams of energy at the surface. The Vorax, Olivia, whispered. Lieutenant Natalie Owens studied her tactical display. I count 27 Vorax vessels, Colonel. They appear to be bombarding specific areas of the planet. Frank nodded grimly. They're methodical, not trying to destroy the planet, but targeting population centers and defense installations. We're receiving a transmission, said the communications officer. It's faint, coming from the surface of Kepler 438b. Put it through, Frank ordered. The screen changed to show one of the avian humanoid beings they had seen in the original. Distress message. Up close, they could see more details. The being had feather-like structures instead of hair, and large eyes that seemed to hold deep sadness. Its skin was a pale blue color. Greetings, humans, the being said, its voice translated by the ship's computers. I am First Guardian Jarl of Kepler. We feared our message would not reach you in time, or that you would choose not to come. We are grateful beyond words. Frank stood up. I am Colonel Frank Delgado of Earth. We received your distress call and have come to help. What is your situation? Jarrell's feathered crest drooped. Dire, Colonel. The Vorax arrived 3 months ago. They began by destroying our orbital defenses, then moved on to our cities. We have lost over half our population. The rest of us hide underground, but the Vorax had begun drilling operations. It is only a matter of time. Why are they attacking you? Olivia asked. They consume, Jarl replied simply. Resources, technology, life itself. They move from system to system, taking everything of value and leaving dead worlds behind. We are not the first to fall to them, and we will not be the last. Unless we stop them, Frank said firmly. Jarl looked surprised. You would fight for us? The Vorax fleet is powerful, and this is only a small part of their forces. We've been waiting a long time for a worthy fight, Frank replied. Hold on a little longer, Guardian Jarl. Help is here. After the transmission ended, Frank called a meeting of the fleet commanders in the Valiant strategy room. Holographic displays showed the Kepler system and the positions of the Vorax ships. We need to understand our enemy before we engage. He said, Dr. Martinez, what have you learned? Olivia brought up new displays showing scans of the Vorax vessels. Their ships appear to be partly organic, partly mechanical. They're powered by some form of energy we haven't seen before. It's incredibly efficient. Weaknesses? Asked Captain Daniel Wright of the UES Defiance. They have strong shields, but our scans show they have to lower them when firing their main weapons, Lieutenant Natalie Owens pointed out. She had been studying the tactical data since their arrival. There's a 3-second window where they're vulnerable. 3 seconds isn't much time, Susan commented. It's enough, Natalie said confidently, if we coordinate our attacks precisely. Frank studied the young lieutenant. She had no combat experience, but her tactical analysis was solid. Work up a battle plan, Lieutenant. I want options. While the tactical team prepared, Frank met with the other ship captains to review historical data about the Vorax. What they found disturbed them all. According to records the Keplerians shared, the Vorax have destroyed at least 7 civilizations in this sector of the galaxy, Captain Wright reported. They follow the same pattern each time. First, they disable defenses. Then they harvest resources and technology. Finally, they collect biological samples before sterilizing the planet. Biological samples? Susan asked. For what purpose? Unknown. Wright replied, but it can't be good. During their preparations, The communications officer rushed into the strategy room. "Colonel, we're picking up additional signals. Not from Kepler 438b, but from nearby systems." Frank frowned. "Show me." The officer brought up a display showing several weak transmissions coming from stars near Kepler 438. When decoded, they revealed messages in multiple languages. One of them, to everyone's shock, was in English. "That's impossible," Susan whispered. "No human ships have ever come this far." "Unless ... double quotes Olivia began, her eyes wide. "The colony ships?" Everyone turned to look at her. "Between 2050 and 2070, Earth launched 17 deep space colony ships," she explained. "They were meant to find habitable worlds and establish human outposts. Most were declared lost when contact couldn't be maintained over such vast distances." They weren't lost, Frank realized. They made it. They founded colonies. "And now those colonies are in danger from the Vorax," Captain Wright added grimly. This changed everything. They weren't just fighting to save an alien civilization that had asked for help. They were fighting to save humans who had been separated. From Earth for generations, Lieutenant Natalie Owens returned with her tactical plan. "Colonel, I've analyzed the Vorax attack patterns. They're predictable, too predictable. Almost like they've never faced an enemy that could truly challenge them." "And have they?" Frank asked. Natalie smiled slightly. "Not until now. I believe we can use their predictability against them. If we coordinate our attacks with precise timing, we can create a cascade failure in their fleet." Frank studied the plan. It was bold, even risky, but it might work. "How soon can we be ready?" 6 hours to recalibrate our weapon systems for maximum effect against their shields," Natalie replied. "You have 4, Frank said. "The Keplerians don't have much time left." As the fleet prepared for battle, Dr. Olivia Martinez continued to study the data from the colony signals. What she found gave her hope. "Colonel," she said, entering the bridge where Frank was reviewing final preparations, "I've confirmed that 3 of the signals are definitely from human colonies. The oldest one was established nearly 60 years ago. They've been trying to contact Earth, but didn't have the technology for faster-than-light communication." "Do they know about the Vorax?" Frank asked. Olivia nodded soberly. "They've been watching them advance through nearby systems. One colony has already been attacked, but managed to drive off a small scout force. This was the first good news they'd heard." "How?" "They've been developing their own technology all this time, in isolation. Different approaches, different solutions. They might have weapons or defenses we could use." Frank considered this new information. "Contact them. Tell them Earth has returned to this part of the galaxy. And tell them we're about to introduce the Vorax to humanity's true nature." The 4 ships of Earth's fleet moved into formation. Weapons that had been dormant for decades powered up. Crews took their battle stations. On the bridge of the Valiant, Colonel Frank Delgado stood looking at the enemy ships that still orbited Kepler 438b, unaware of the threat that had arrived at the edge of the system. "All ships report ready, Colonel," said Commander Rivera. Frank nodded. "Lieutenant Owens, are you confident in your plan?" Natalie stood straighter. "Yes, sir." "Then it's time to remind the galaxy why even distant civilizations remember humans as warriors." Frank took his seat. "All ships advance to attack positions. The Vorax have had their way for too long. Today, they learn what happens when you awaken humanity's sleeping giants." The 4 ships of Earth's fleet moved silently through space toward Kepler 438b. They used the planet's moon as cover, hiding their approach from the Vorax vessels. "All ships in position," Commander Susan Rivera reported. "The Vorax still haven't detected us." Colonel Frank Delgado nodded. "They're not looking for threats. They think they've already won." On the tactical station, Lieutenant Natalie Owens made final adjustments to her battle plan. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, setting targeting. Parameters. Lieutenant, are you ready? Frank asked. Natalie took a deep breath. Yes, sir. The attack pattern is programmed into all ship systems. We'll target the command vessel first, then move outward in sequence. Frank studied the main screen, where the Vorax ships hung over the wounded planet. Begin the countdown. Weapons free. On my mark. Throughout the 4 human ships, crews prepared for battle. Many had never seen real combat before. Some had only learned about the existence of these advanced ships days ago. But all understood what was at stake. 20 seconds to optimal firing position. Natalie announced. Frank opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Colonel Delgado. Today we fight not just for the Keplerians, but for humanity's future. These Vorax have destroyed worlds. Across this sector, including some of our own lost colonies, they believe nothing can stand against them. We're about to prove them wrong. 10 seconds, Natalie said. Remember your training, Frank continued. Remember what's at stake. Follow. Lieutenant Owen's attack planned precisely. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Mark. Frank's voice was calm. Fire. The U's Valiant erupted with energy as its main weapons fired for the first time in 60 years. Beams of brilliant blue light shot across space, followed by smaller projectiles that moved faster than the eye could track. The other 3 ships fired in perfect sequence, their weapons converging on the largest Vorax vessel. For 3 critical seconds, the enemy ship's shields were down as it prepared to fire on the planet below. In those 3 seconds, the combined firepower of Earth's fleet tore through its hull. The Vorax command ship exploded in a massive ball, a fire that briefly outshone the star. Before the light had faded, the human ships were already moving to their next targets. Direct hit. Natalie called out, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Command vessel destroyed. Moving to secondary. Targets. The Vorax fleet, caught completely by surprise, took precious seconds to respond. By then, the human ships had already destroyed 3 more vessels. They're turning to engage, Susan reported. Incoming fire. Evasive maneuvers, Frank ordered. Stay with the plan. The U's Valiant rolled sharply as energy beams from the Vorax ships passed through the space it had occupied moments before. On the bridge, crew members held tight to their stations. Their weapons are powerful, Natalie noted, but slow to target. They're not used to fighting enemies that can move like we do. The battle continued as the human ships darted between the much larger Vorax vessels. Like wolves attacking a herd of elephants, they struck quickly and moved on, always targeting the brief moments when the enemy shields were down. UES Guardian taking heavy fire, came a report from the communications. Officer. On the screen, they could see the Guardian surrounded by 3 Vorax ships. Its shields flickered under the assault. Intrepid and Defiance provide cover for Guardian, Frank ordered. Valiant will draw their fire. He turned to Susan. Take us in, full speed. Target the lead Vorax vessel. The Valiant accelerated toward the group of enemy ships. As it approached, it fired all weapons, catching the attention of the Vorax. 2 of the massive alien ships turned away from the Guardian to focus on this new threat. They've taken the bait, Frank said. Now, Lieutenant Owens. Natalie activated. A special sequence. The Valiant's engines flared brightly, creating an energy signature that appeared to the Vorax sensors like a critical overload. They think we're about to explode, she explained. They're backing off to avoid the blast. This created the opening they needed. The Guardian slipped away from the trap, while Intrepid and Defiance launched a coordinated attack on the distracted Vorax ships. The battle raged for nearly an hour. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable, but the Vorax vessels were powerful and numerous. The used Guardian took severe damage to its port side. The Valiant lost one of its secondary weapon arrays. Enemy fleet down to 12 vessels. Natalie reported, but our ships are taking damage. Guardian's shields are failing. Frank studied the tactical display. We need to end this now. What's the status of the Hammer protocol? Natalie looked surprised. It's ready, but we've never tested it in actual combat. No time like the present, Frank replied. Prepare the Hammer. The Hammer protocol was one of Project Hibernation's most closely guarded secrets. It combined the energy outputs of all 4 ships into a single devastating weapon. All ships, this is Colonel Delgado, Frank said over the fleet channel. Form up for Hammer protocol. Guardian, take position at coordinates Alpha, Defiance and Defiance. Intrepid, Beta and Gamma positions. The 4 ships moved into a tight formation, with the Valiant at the center. Energy began to flow between them, creating a web of light. Hammer protocol activated, Natalie announced. Energy buildup at 80%, 90%. Maximum capacity reached. Frank looked at the remaining Vorax ships, which had gathered together, preparing for another attack run. Perfect, he said quietly. Target the center of there. Formation and fire. The energy that had built up between the human ships surged forward in a massive wave. It struck the Vorax fleet like a physical blow, overwhelming their shields and tearing through their hulls. Ship after ship exploded, unable to withstand the incredible power. When the energy dissipated, only 3 Vorax vessels remained. They turned away from the planet and accelerated rapidly, fleeing into deep space. They're retreating, Susan said, disbelief in her voice. The bridge crew cheered, but Frank remained focused. Track them. I want to know where they're going. Already. On it, Natalie replied. They appear to be heading toward the edge of the system, probably to warn the rest of their fleet. Frank nodded grimly. So this was just the beginning. The human ships regrouped and moved toward Kepler 438b. As they approached, they received a transmission from the surface. First Guardian Giral appeared on the screen, his feathered crest. Now standing tall with renewed hope. Humans of Earth, you have done the impossible. For generations, the Vorax have never been defeated. You have saved what remains of our people. The battle is won, but the war may just be beginning, Frank replied honestly. Those ships that escaped will bring reinforcements. Then we will. Prepare, Giral said firmly. Already, our people are emerging from the underground shelters. We will rebuild our defenses with your help. Frank turned to Olivia. Doctor, open channels to those human colonies we detected. Tell them what happened here today. We'll need every ally we can find for what's coming. As the Valiant moved into orbit around Kepler 438b, Frank looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a much larger Vorax fleet was continuing its path of destruction, unaware that it had finally met an enemy that could fight back. Colonel, Susan said quietly, standing beside him, what happens when the main Vorax fleet arrives? Be won only by surprise and quick thinking. Next time they'll be prepared for us. Frank smiled slightly. Then we'll have to be even more surprising. Send a message to Earth. Tell them to awaken the rest of the fleet. All of it. Susan's eyes widened. The deep space carriers? The autonomous? Battle platforms? That's our entire remaining military capability. This isn't just about the Keplerians anymore, Frank said, looking at the data from the human colonies. Our people are out here, scattered among the stars, and they need our protection. On the tactical station, Lieutenant Natalie Owens was already working on new battle strategies. The Vorax have a weakness, she said. They've never had to adapt. Their tactics. They've never faced a real challenge before. And humanity? Frank asked. Natalie looked up, determination in her eyes. Adapting is what we do best. 2 weeks passed since the battle at Kepler 438b. The human fleet remained in orbit, helping the Keplerians rebuild their damaged world. Engineers from the ships worked with local scientists to create new defense systems. Medical teams treated the injured. It was a time of healing and preparation. On the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, Colonel Frank Delgado studied the latest reports from Earth. The message had taken days to reach home through the jump gate, and the response had just arrived. "They've approved the full awakening," he told Commander Susan Rivera. "Every ship, every weapon system we left sleeping is being activated." Susan looked both relieved and concerned. "How many?" 17 more capital ships like the Valiant, 42 smaller vessels, and the deep space carriers. Susan's eyes widened. The deep space carriers were the largest ships humanity had ever built. Each one carried hundreds of fighter craft and thousands of troops. They had been created during the final days of the colony wars, then hidden away before they could be used. "President Mason is addressing the United Nations today," Frank continued. "She's telling the world everything about the Vorax threat and our lost colonies. No more secrets." Lieutenant Natalie Owens joined them, carrying a datapad. In the 2 weeks since the battle, she had been working with Keplerian defense experts to improve their tactical systems. "Colonel, we've established contact with all 3 human colonies in nearby systems," she reported. "They're sending representatives to meet with us." Frank nodded. "Good. We'll need their help." "There's more," Natalie added. "The colony on Epsilon Eridani 4 has been developing their own technology for decades. They've created weapons specifically designed to fight the Vorax. They call them phase disruptors." "How effective are they?" Susan asked. "Very. According to their data, a single shot can disable a Vorax ship's organic components. It's like a virus that targets their biomechanical systems." This was the best news they had heard in days. Frank immediately ordered a team to work with the Epsilon Eridani colonists to adapt the technology for their own ships. Later that day, the first representatives from the human colonies arrived. Frank, Susan, and Olivia met them in the Valiant's conference room. The 3 men and 2 women who entered looked human, but there were subtle differences. Their skin tones and eye colors showed adaptations to different suns and environments. A tall woman with striking violet eyes stepped forward. "Colonel Delgado? I am Governor Lavra Everett of New Terra in the Epsilon Eridani system. We've waited a long time for Earth to find us again." Frank shook her hand. "I'm sorry it took so long, Governor. Until the Keplerian distress signal, we had no idea you had survived out here." Another representative, a dark-skinned man with pale blue eyes, joined them. "Director Ken Abbott from the Providence Colony in Tau Ceti. We've been monitoring the Vorax advance for 15 years. They've destroyed 7 civilizations that we know of. 8, counting the partial destruction of Kepler," added a younger woman. "I'm Captain Diane Carter of the Frontier Defense Force from Wolf 359 Colony. We've had skirmishes with Vorax scout ships 3 times in the past decade." Frank was impressed. These colonies, cut off from Earth for generations, had not only survived, but had prepared to defend themselves. Their independence and resilience were exactly what would be needed in the coming conflict. The meeting lasted 4 hours as they shared information and formed plans. The colonial representatives confirmed what they already feared. The main Vorax fleet was massive, with hundreds of ships larger than those they had faced at Kepler. "They follow a pattern," Director Abbott explained, showing a star map with the Vorax invasion route. "They send advance forces to weaken a system. Then the main fleet arrives to finish the job. Based on their previous campaigns, we estimate they'll reach Kepler again in about 4 months." 4 months to prepare, Frank said thoughtfully. "It will have to be enough." That evening, Frank stood on the observation deck of the Valiant, looking. Down at Kepler 438b, parts of the planet still showed the scars of the Vorax attack, but lights had begun to reappear in areas that had been dark. Life was returning. Dr. Olivia Martinez joined him, carrying new data from her communications with Earth. Colonel, I just received word from Admiral Phillips. The first wave of reinforcements will arrive through the jump gate in 2 days. Frank nodded. About time. What about the deep space carriers? The UES Orion and UES Hercules will be here within the week. The others will follow as they're awakened. And the phase disruptor technology? Our engineers are working with the Epsilon Eridani team now. They think they can have prototypes ready for testing in 10 days. Frank allowed himself a small smile. We might actually have a chance, Doctor. Olivia looked out at the stars. When I found that signal, I never imagined it would lead to all this. War with an alien species, lost human colonies, an alliance with the Keplerians. Sometimes the universe has plans we can't foresee, Frank replied. Humanity locked away its weapons and tried to forget its warrior past. But perhaps that past is exactly what's needed now. Over the next month, ships arrived daily through the jump gate. Not just from Earth, but from the human colonies as well. The combined fleet grew until over 100 vessels orbited Kepler 438b or patrolled the nearby space. Engineers worked around the clock to outfit the ships with the new phase disruptor technology. The weapons were tested against captured Vorax technology and proved devastatingly effective. On the surface of the planet, Keplerian cities began to rebuild. Their tall, graceful buildings rose once more from the ashes. In orbit, new defense platforms took shape, created through the combined efforts of human and Keplerian engineers. 2 months after the first battle, Colonel Delgado stood in the newly constructed Alliance Command Center. Representatives from Earth, the human colonies, and the Keplerians gathered around a massive holographic display showing the positions of their combined forces. The Vorax main fleet has changed course, Lieutenant Owens reported. They're moving faster than we anticipated. New estimated arrival, 3 weeks. Murmurs ran through the assembled leaders. Frank studied the tactical display, where hundreds of red dots represented the approaching Vorax armada. Are we ready? Asked First Guardian Jarrell. Frank looked around the room at the faces of humans from Earth, humans from the colonies, and their Keplerian allies. Where once there had been fear, he now saw determination. We've done everything possible to prepare, he said. The fleet is in position. The defense platforms are operational. The phase disruptors have been installed on all capital ships. But will it be enough? Pressed Director Abbott. Frank considered his answer carefully. The Vorax have never been defeated in a major engagement. They've never faced a united opposition. They've never encountered humans at war. He pointed to the display. These red dots represent an enemy that thinks it's invincible. Our job is to prove them wrong. As the meeting concluded, Communications Officer Ryan Cooper approached Frank with an urgent message. Colonel, we are receiving new transmissions, not just from the 3 colonies we already contacted, but from a dozen more systems. There are human outposts scattered throughout this entire sector, all responding to our call. Frank read the message with growing hope. More colonies, more allies, more ships joining the fight. Humanity had spread further among the stars than anyone on Earth had dreamed possible. Later, on the bridge of the Valiant, Frank stood with Susan, Natalie, and Olivia as they watched ships arrive from yet another human colony. When I was a young officer, Frank said quietly, I fought in the colony wars. Humans killing humans over resources and independence. It nearly destroyed us. That's why we hid away our weapons and tried to forget what we were capable of. He looked at the massive fleet now assembled around Kepler 438b, human ships from Earth and the colonies, Keplerian vessels, and even representatives from other species who had suffered under the Vorax. But now I understand, he continued. We didn't lock away our capacity for war because it was wrong. We locked it away because it's powerful, too powerful to use against each other. But against an enemy like the Vorax, who threaten not just us, but all life. Susan finished his thought. It's exactly what the galaxy needs. On the tactical display, the Vorax fleet continued its approach. The final battle was coming. But this time, they would not find an easy victory. This time, they would face humanity. At war, not against itself, but united in defense of all life. The sleeping giants were fully awake, and the galaxy would never be the same again.